Hello, it's Miss Ward, and I'm back with Chapter 7. We're going to see what happens with Bertha and with Wishbone this time. By the time I got home, it was getting dark. Gus's old rattletrap of a car was in the driveway, and the smell of spaghetti sauce drifted through the screen door. My feet felt like cinder blocks as I made my way across the yard toward the house. More than anything, I wanted to just go on back to my room and pretend like this day had never happened. But I didn't. I put one cinder block foot in front of the other until I was back on the porch. Until I was on the back porch, where Gus and Bertha sat gazing out at the mountain view. "Hey," I said, and my voice sounded like a sniveling baby. I kept my eyes on the leaf-covered floorboards of the porch. "Hey there," Gus said. I couldn't look at Bertha, but her silence smacked me hard. I sat down and studied the fading hearts and stars I'd drawn on my arm. From somewhere way down in the woods, a bullfrog croaked, sending his deep-throated call echoing out into the cool evening air. I counted to 3 in my head, and then I said it. "I'm sorry, Bertha." Then I did what I told myself I most definitely would not do. I cried. And I swear I could not stop no matter how much I wanted to. The worst part was that I couldn't get myself to tell Bertha those things I'd practiced in my head. Like how I didn't mean to holler at her, and how I don't hate this house perched on the mountainside with Pegasus up there shining over the porch. How those canning jars don't bother me one little bit. And most of all, how I love Cinderella, because who doesn't? But all I did was cry. And then Bertha was kneeling in front of me with her warm hand on my ink-stained arm. "You are a blessing in this house, Charlie," she said. A blessing? She should have called me mean and hateful and dumb and sorry. But she called me a blessing. Then Gus stood up and said the perfect Gus thing. "Let's have some of that blackberry cobbler before supper." So that's what we did. The 3 of us sat out on the porch as the stars were beginning to twinkle up in the Carolina sky, and ate blackberry cobbler before supper. And while Bertha told us about how her friend Racine backed into her car in the flagpole at the post office that afternoon, and then just drove on off like nothing even happened, an acorn dropped from the branches of the oak tree hanging over the porch and fell right at my feet. I nearly spilled my cobbler when I jumped up and grabbed it. I had almost let that day slip by without making my wish. And now here came an acorn, like it was dropped right down from heaven. I hesitated, but then I went on and did what I had to do. I turned in a circle 3 times, clutching that acorn tight and making my wish. Then I went back to my room and set the acorn on the windowsill. I would leave it here for 3 days to make sure my wish would be even stronger. That's what my Girl Scout leader in Raleigh told me about acorn wishes. And that could not be a lie, because Girl Scout leaders do not lie. After supper, we had more blackberry cobbler. Gus went out to the garden to make sure the sprinkler was turned off. And Bertha said, "Stay right here, Charlie. I want to show you something." She went to her room and came back with a tattered shoebox. She took the lid off and said, "Look." I peered inside. Photographs. Bertha rummaged through them and took one out. She smiled at it and handed it to me. "Your mama and me," she said, pointing to the handwriting on the back. Bertha and Carla, in big printed letters. I took the faded photograph from her. 2 young girls sat on the hood of a car with their arms around each other. Which one's Mama? I asked. Bertha pointed to the smaller girl. I squinted down at her. She was missing her 2 front teeth and had a Band-Aid on her elbow. I could not take my eyes off of that girl. I imagined her getting down from that car and skipping in circles. I imagined her singing with her big sister Bertha in the back seat of their daddy's car. I imagined her telling knock-knock jokes and roller skating and eating ice cream on her porch at night. When had this gap-toothed little girl turned into that sad woman in her dark bedroom in Raleigh? Did y'all love each other? I asked Bertha. We sure did. Then she showed me some more photographs. Mama opening a present beside a Christmas tree. The 2 of them playing with a puppy in the snow. Bertha pulling Mama in a wagon on a dirt road. Why don't y'all see each other anymore? I said. Bertha let out a big sigh and shook her head. We grew up, she said. When you grow up, sometimes life gets complicated. That wasn't a very good answer, but I could tell it was the only one I was going to get. So I just said, oh. When Gus came back in from the garden, we went out on the porch. They held hands while Bertha told us about some old man selling moldy strawberries from the back of a truck out on Highway 14. Then she said, You can call Jackie tomorrow if you want to, Charlie. No thanks, I said. It was so quiet I could hear Bertha breathing. I could feel her looking at me, but I stared out at the treetops. Charlie, she said, don't be mad at Jackie. I'm not mad at Jackie, I said, but that lie was like a dark cloud settling over us. I was mad at Jackie. She acted like she didn't have one single trouble hanging on her line, and she didn't care one bit about me. Then we sat there in silence, breathing in the cool night air and listening to the crickets under the porch. That night when I went to bed, I laid there in the dark and pictured a clothesline full of somebody else's troubles. I knew for sure there were a lot of them I'd rather pluck off that line than mine. I imagined what the other troubles might be. There would probably be toothaches and failed math tests, lost cats and ugly hair, cheating boyfriends and broken down cars. But none of those could hold a candle to my troubles, weighing down that clothesline like a sack full of bricks. I tiptoed to the window and stared out into the night, thinking maybe I'd see a falling star to wish on. The moon was bright over the mountains and sent a shimmering glow across the yard, making shadows that snaked around the dogwood tree and crept along the garden fence. I knew Wishbone was out there somewhere, all by himself. I wondered what he was doing. Eating stale bread out of someone's garbage? Trotting along the highway in the moonlight? Sleeping under somebody's porch? I hoped Gus wasn't right about Wishbone wanting to be a stray. But then I remembered how he had wagged his tail at me that day. He liked me. I was sure of it. And if he was mine and didn't have to be a stray anymore, I bet he would love me. I clasped my hands together like I was praying and whispered into the darkness, Please come back, Wishbone. And that's the end of chapter 7. I certainly hope that Wishbone comes back and she gets her friend that she so desperately wants and needs. I hope you've enjoyed reading with me tonight, and I look forward to reading again tomorrow. Bye-bye.